Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Darkside channel, and this is a little introduction, in fact the second introduction to the C++ Web Toolkit framework, quite a mouthful, and it's just CPP WTF. It's not by accident like this because there's already a C++ Web Toolkit. It's Witty, I think, it's WT. And their framework is quite impressive, but by the time I started this project I didn't knew about the existence of this project, but since then I got inspired by them. Originally I'm from the C# and Java world, so the intention was to create something like GWT, Google Web Toolkit, and Vardin is building on the Google Web Toolkit, and it's quite easy to use them because you don't have to care about a lot of things you usually have to care if you do classical web development, like PHP, where you have your get parameters and post, and you often, if you don't use frameworks, you just emit pure HTML code and you have to write them, you have to write your own widgets. And if you work with a framework that's widget-based, so like C++ WTF, and it makes it more easy to produce and faster to produce content. So the intention was for me, first of all, to learn C++. I started about a year ago. I started with C++, and I was quite interested, and I was intrigued by the performance and by the possible performance it can produce. So yeah, that's why I started this little project, and it's, for my skill base, it came quite far, I think. And yeah, maybe I should show some code to introduce it. So what I basically started with was just a few classes, as you can see, a body, a div, form and stuff, and HTML. These are all HTML tags, just like you know them from writing HTML yourself. But if you have a class for everything, you can build your own widget if you like from the basic HTML tag classes. So you just yeah, you can use classes to build your widgets, so you don't have to write code yourself. And all these HTML tags are inheriting from HTML element, which has some methods, so you can add sub-elements, because most elements have the ability to have sub-elements, and all the other stuff you get, drop zone, hidden ID, because you want to set a certain CSS ID or CSS class and stuff. And these are all methods you can you have at your disposal here. So that was the start. It was quite easy because you can just download XAMPP or WAMP or wherever you are, and with the technology of CGI, and it's not computer generated image, I mean it's the common gateway interface, I think, which starts a new process and executes whatever executable you address in your line. So every Apache has its htdocs, but it also has its CGI -bin folder, and whatever you put in there you can address by writing localhost and CGI bin and whatever executable you have in there. You can use Python, Perl, and whatever. So I started with this because Apache takes everything that is posted to the output stream and presents it to the one that requests the website, in most cases a browser, and that was quite easy. And yes, it was quite easy to use because you don't have to care about anything. No request passing and HTTP header passing and stuff, but it was quite slow, and with slow I mean about 30 to 40 milliseconds per request. And if you're a normal user, 40 milliseconds doesn't sound so much, but if you keep in mind that the rendering of the website from classes to an HTML string was only 400 microseconds, then you ask yourself the question, what is he doing the other 29 or 39 milliseconds? And that's why I switched to my own web server. As you can see here, it's a class that's called Web Application, where you can register your own web page. It's quite like Vardin. In Vardin you can create your own page and use it with what was it? It was CDI, I think. It was content injection, I think. But things like reflection aren't in yet in C++, so I had to use some dirty little tricks for that. But you can register your page, so it's a class you write, it has to implement an interface, and then you are good to go. So the thing you give it as a parameter is the name of the page. So just a slash is the root page. So if you just type in localhost and colon your port, then you will the browser will request the root page, yes, and the root page is marked by a slash. If you're a Linux user, you probably know that. And by calling start, you are starting the web server I implemented. It's not quite fully functional. It just has okay, I have found a registered web page, and I will return you said page, or I didn't find it. But something like you aren't allowed to view this, or redirection or something isn't built in yet, but it's the plan for the future. What I also did, I implemented some widgets and some layouts. The widgets are the basic widgets as you find in other widget-based libraries. So in the business world, you are often not presenting some nice images and just have buttons or something. You have often input fields and output fields and tables and so on. So if you need a table, it's an HTML data table. It works in how to pronounce it. It works well with the data table I've wrote in my DNC framework, which this framework is based on. Sometimes you see in here DNC / some class or header file, and this is the framework I started with originally. I tried to make the user be able to write C++ just like C#. So it has the .NET, C#.NET class names and roughly the same functionality. And because I started learning with C# and I missed those functions, so well, I implemented them myself. It's not quite finished, but when is software ever finished? And also it's a framework. I'm a beginner, so take everything with a pinch of salt. Yes, so you have your widgets, you have your layouts, horizontal and vertical layout. I don't think I need to explain them. A grid layout is a CSS grid, so it has the nice functionality of that you define your columns and your rows, and then you just insert elements with the position and row and column span, and then everything adds up quite nicely. And yeah, that's about it. So it's the basic HTML tags. It's not all HTML tags, but the basic ones are available. Widgets are available, again, not the whole 9 yards, but it should do it. And some basic layouts. Some people may miss, I think it was it border layout or box layout? I don't remember quite well, but I think it was border layout, where you have a fixed layout, but you can place your whatever widgets you want in the layout. So it was one big center, left and right was a column, and top and bottom was thin rows, I think. But that's something that will come. Yeah, and this should be it for now, and I hope I could get you interested in it, because it's just a small project, but I have high hopes for it. Especially I tried to make it quite easy to use. So you just say, okay, I have an application. Later there will be a configuration class that you can load from a file or something, but you just say, okay, I have my web application, I register my pages, and I call start. And then you don't have to care about anything and just write your widget code inside the web page class. And at the moment it's more for static pages, so content that's changing is probably a bit more difficult, but nothing that can't be implemented. But I think that's a sentence you hear quite often from a programmer, because nearly everything is possible in software, but you have to implement it, of course. But I'm investing quite some free time for that, and until now it works quite well. So for all the rendering you see here, it just takes microseconds to do all this. And if you have a very big page, I created a string builder from an example that I found on Stack Overflow that was quite nice. And yeah, so I'm having quite some fun with it, and I'm often cursing the developers of the C++ programming language, because it's in the start it's as easy as every other language, but to master it and to optimize performance is quite hard. And if you are used to having reflections like C# and Java, you need to get used to stuff like this, where you say, okay, I have a type name T. Generic programming is also quite useful in C#, but it's runtime and not compile time. But C++ is all about compile time, so you have to check something like, okay, only enable this method if the template that was given is inherits from the web page class. And this looks quite easy, but to find out how it works and to make it work consistently was quite the challenge. So, and I also have an unordered map of unique pointers with a page holder base, because you can't just say you can't store classes, you can't make a list of classes, you have something that contains this class. So I created the page holder class that takes as a generic template parameter the web page that is registered and is made to a unique pointer which is stored inside the unordered map by a string. So the string here we will see here is the name that was given, and that was the root sign. So you can imagine quite good if someone says, I want the root page, so you just have the key in here, okay, root, and then you get a pointer to your page holder, which you get a pointer to a page holder base, but this holds your page holder that has this class as generic template parameter, so it is able to instantiate it and call a method like handle request. And if it handles the request, it returns a string, and this string I can return to the caller like your browser and stuff. And it's really just a start, because I'm having some problems with sockets. I have also written my own socket class in my DNC framework, because .NET has its own socket class, and I'm wrapping the Berkeley sockets. So I tried to use just accept a connection, receive the data, and send it back, and that worked satisfying for the moment, but it was all blocking. I could just accept one concurrent request, and that made it quite difficult. So I used select. Select is another Berkeley socket method, which when it returns, it says how many sockets can be read or accepted, and then you iterate over it and say, okay, can I accept something, or do I need to handle all the other sockets that were returned? But to write a wrapper for it was a bit more difficult. To write all of this was quite difficult, because I wanted to make it non-blocking, or at least don't block, because it's hard to explain, because non-blocking is in most cases better, but in some cases you need to block and it's easier to write code for it. So I hope I can do something with the select method and some thread pooling. So you say, okay, not too many people at the same time are requesting websites, so it's okay to have just 5 threads in standby, and you dispose them to those threads. But we will see. It was just last night that I finished this code here, but I'm going to commit the code you see here, because last time it worked. I had an error at some time, but I seemed to have fixed it. And I hate errors that I fixed, which I didn't know that I fixed. It's maybe a confusing sentence, but I hope you understand it. And so yes, this is about it. So you have HTML tags, HTML tag classes, you have widget classes, you have layout classes, and the new part is a web application class, so you don't have to write your own. So you don't need to use something like fast CGI or something, because CGI is creating a new process per request, and that's quite a lot, because it takes over, what was it, I think 25 milliseconds just to create a process, and you don't want to create a new process per request. It's okay if you have, let's say, 50 requests per second. That's okay, but as soon it gets as it gets more, you are going to run into trouble, because creating a process is quite computing intensive, and I don't want to have that. I want to have just one process, and if the load increases, I want to just increase the thread count. And that's why I created my own web server, and I will continue to do this, not just to learn from it, but to make it more scalable. In the future, I'll hope to add some functionality like Java Beans, so you can make API calls to JSON JSON APIs from other frameworks or services. And yeah, that's about it. I think that summons all the functionality, and not all parsing is done. This is just the rough stuff. But I hope you liked it, and maybe you check it out on my GitHub page. It's Operation Darkside on GitHub, quite easy to find, or you just insert project DNC, written without spaces, and or CPP WTF, I think was the name I gave it. It was CPP WT at the start, but as I said, WT is taken by another framework that does similar things like my framework, but uses some other techniques to get to the point. Probably better, because they are more experienced. But if you like the C# style, you are very welcome to use my 2 C++ frameworks, Project DNC and CPP WTF. So, and with that, I thank you for watching, and I hope the sound was good this time and didn't break off or something, the video didn't stutter, and you could read everything. And if not, please leave a comment. If you like this video, give me a like, a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, a thumbs down, but if you give me a thumbs down, please write in the comments why. Because I want to improve this channel, I want to improve myself, and without criticism that isn't possible. So thank you for watching and goodbye.